You've seen the thumbnail and I haven't, so I'm not sure as I'm stood here whether this is I'm going to rebuild my clutch, or I'm going to adjust my clutch, do a couple of modifications and go for a ride. So it is interesting. It's the way with projects. I've got it on the lift and I thought I was going to be having it on the road. If you watched previous videos, you'll know that this bike that became my project bike when I bought it for parts for another one, that gave me quite a lot of interest in doing the engine, had a couple of issues when I've been doing the shakedown runs. And I think I said in my last video, I intended to drop the oil, set the tappets and perhaps put some less posh plugs in it because there was a bit of a running problem. Anyway, I think now I know what the running problem is. I don't necessarily know what the cure is yet. It seemed a bit like clutch slip. I did think it might be that there was a bit of a misfire. The last time I actually took the bike out, and it's a shame I haven't got any video of it, but the clutch was slipping a lot more. And then the interesting thing is, and I might run this bit of video, I actually was getting ready for another ride, did a couple of changes, and discovered that the clutch isn't clutching whatsoever. Now, I find this really intriguing, and I'm suspecting that a lot of people, myself included, are starting to think, well, maybe not using quite the right oil has contaminated the plates and they're slipping. And that is quite possible. And that might be what I find. Unless I'm changing the oil, that's perhaps a good thing anyway. I'm going to have the clutch out and have a look at it. Now, it could be the oil, because the clutch, I was shocked, wasn't stuck when I got the bike. And that really surprised me. And I'm wondering if perhaps the clutch should have been stuck, but was just contaminated, but dragging. And I think it was dragging enough so that I could use it as a clutch. Sounds insane, doesn't it? I'll get there in a minute. And I think as it's cleaned up and warmed up, the plates have cleaned off, and now they're not dragging anymore, so they're just slipping. And I'll show you a bit of the slip in a minute. And in looking at, I thought, well, I'll buy a replacement set of friction plates for this, came across the fact that the engine number for this was an engine number where they actually put 7 friction plates in. And that was only the last couple of years that they made these single overhead cams. And prior to that, they'd had 6 friction plates in. Now, I know that someone's tried to put a lot of effort into this engine and sometimes got a few things wrong. It happens. And I'm wondering if they put a new clutch in it, but ordered the clutch that has 6 friction plates rather than 7. And I'll find out when I have a look. What it actually is the actual tangs on the driven and the drive drum are actually a little bit longer. And I'm wondering if, with 6 plates that should have been dragging, it was giving enough friction for me to ride the bike. And as they've cleaned off, they've actually ended up where they might be absolutely perfectly fine there, but there isn't quite enough pressure for them to hold. It could be the oil. Wonder what we're going to find. Now at the moment, the engine is in neutral. Yeah. Let me just up for down, isn't it? Because of reverse. Let me just put it in first. Now it's in first. And the engine's definitely not turning over. I can feel the clutch is actually trying, but it's not trying very hard. Back to neutral. So there's the issue. And with what I've shown you, I think, like me, you'll think it's either the adjuster on the clutch push rod, for want of a better description, or the cable that's adjusted incorrect. And to be fair, I had adjusted it because it had slipped so badly last time I rode the bike, I actually had this cover off to adjust it, and I thought I'd found a smoking gun because there was not a lot of play on the adjuster in there, and backing it off to where it should be, I thought that's going to be the answer. There's lots of play on that. This is the adjustment screw and that's the lock. So if we look where that is, just undo the lock screw, which is a 12. Alright. Take a few threads off this. Now then, is there going to be any play on this or not? My guess is less than half a turn. Well, I think it's touching there. In fact, I'm sure it's touching there. Any more and I'm starting to push it in, so it's not even a quarter of a turn. Quarter of a turn is the minimum. So what I'm going to do is touch in and a complete half turn back. The actual play at the lever hasn't really changed that much, which you wouldn't expect, but I can feel, if that makes any sense, I can feel that it's got a bit of take up before it actually starts pressing. I think that's going to make a tremendous difference actually. So I think I found a smoking gun. Let's hope so. Get it back together now, and then as soon as I can, get it out for a ride. Me being me, I checked it a couple of times before I finally decided that's where I'm leaving it. Let's get this back on. Put it all back together and I thought, I found something that's going to stop this clutch slip. Anyway, I then changed the gear change mechanism because I wanted to try it in a slightly different position, and then discovered, hang on, the clutch doesn't seem to be engaging whatsoever. Of course, blamed myself at first and thought, what have you done here? Had it off again, had another look. Now, even when you put it back to nothing, the clutch is not engaging, or it's not engaging enough to the drive to reach the rear wheel. So it's an interesting one, this, and I can't tell you how annoyed I was because I was all ready to go out for a ride. I'm just going to drain the sump first of all. I'll do the tank afterwards because I do want to just get in, and you always have to think, don't you? So it'll be that way to do up, so it's got to be that way to undo. Nice and easy. Let's try not to drop it in. Because the camera's positioned so that I need to put my hand in a funny position. And this engine does wet sump. And I dropped it. There we go, that's all the oil out of the sump, which is all I need really to take the clutch out. I'll drain the tank later because I'm really anxious to get a look at this clutch first. Right, let's have the Kickstarter off. And I actually think I wanted it a little bit further forward. So although I'm going to mark this, I'm actually going to mark it there. So that when I put this back on, I actually just tilt it that a little bit further forward. It's okay where it is, but it'd be better where I'm going to put it. And it's a 13. That's the top. Let's see. No, didn't think it'd be loose enough. So let's just open this up a little bit. Let's see if that's done it. There we go. Straight off. 5mm. One of the thoughts I had was maybe this plate hadn't been made correctly and that it might have been pressing on the clutch actuator inside. Random things that you think of. But I'm pretty confident that it isn't. And on this plate, we have a short one in there and longer ones in the other ones. And just to check out my theory, put a bit of tape in to see if it was touching, and it definitely isn't, so it's nothing to do with that. This is the actual push rod type adjustment. It's a lock nut and it's a flat head screw in the end. You do it up until you can feel it touching and then you back it off half a turn or thereabouts. When I first looked, it was only backed off about 1/8 of a turn. I thought that was a smoking gun. I was wrong. Rather than fiddle about with the cable at the top end and the cable here, as I'm undoing it all together, what I'm going to do is just take off the lock nut off here, he says. I'm stripping it out so it doesn't really matter. And then I can just take this arm off. And that makes it a lot easier to take off and on here. Just have to slide that out of there. Right, I'm dismantling it anyway, so what does it matter? Oh, and for those disbelieving souls, that's it touching, and that's where I'd backed it off to. So I'm pretty confident it wasn't this. Just need to finagle this out. You would think that thread would thread into there, but it doesn't. And now I've got all these socket head screws to take off. And despite the fact I've drained the sump, pretty confident I will get some oil coming out here, so you might as well get the mop up ready. Now I'm just going to loosen these first of all. You could have a pattern, you might not, but I will try. I'll probably get it wrong. Now, once I've loosened them, I'll go back and I'll just see if I feel that the threads feel okay. Because it's very, very easy at this stage to miss that you've got a dodgy thread. And if you have, it's better to fix it before you try putting this thing back on. So, that feels all right. That feels okay to me. I'll just work my way around now. I always forget one. There we go. Feels all right. Right, now I will actually gun them out and put them in a nice little tray. It's not likely to come off by finger. Oh, maybe it is actually. Oh, well, usually it needs a little bit of tappy, but this is actually just falling off really. And straight away you see where someone's had a problem in the past. So this is the plate that holds the springs in, and as you can see, one of the ears is actually broken on this. Someone's definitely been in here. There's a nice new gasket on there, So I need to undo these and do them sort of fairly evenly, because that's what's caused this. The spring pressure pushes against the ears. Now, that'll work like that. I would like a new one, so I'll perhaps try and find one, but I won't be broken hearted at putting this back. If it was broken round here, that's totally different, but it'll still work like that. It's just not as good as you'd like it. Maybe I'll put it in gear. Hope it does actually stick. Let's see if that's helped. Maybe not. Right, what can I do? So what I'm going to do, got it in gear, pushing down on the rear brake, and hopefully, yeah, that'll do it. So just loosen them first. I'll tell you what, that's hurting my arm. Okie doke. So all I need to do now is, until it's all come loose. I can feel the spring pressure getting less. Right. Now then, there comes the plate. And here are the springs. What I'll need to do is check these to see if they're within spec. I won't rush to change them because it didn't feel bad. Interesting. Further evidence of my theory that the person who did the clutch last didn't quite know everything they needed to know with this is, if you look at the lock washer, it's nicely shaped there so it won't go swiveling round. However, not a single one of the tangs is into one of the slots so that this will not come undone. So it looks like it's a new one that's been put on, but it just hasn't been used in the way that it should be. Now, it's a funny little nut, this, and if you've seen my other videos, if you look at my previous CB750, you'll see how I made myself a tool to undo that out of a 22mm socket. So if you do want one of these, have a look and you'll see how I made it in a previous video on CB750 clutches. Sometimes it's better to use a impact gun just to shock it off. I'm just going to see if I can move it first of all by holding the brake and using my tool. Let's just see. No, hurting my fingers instead. Let's go and try the impact gun. It's a pretty lightweight gun, this, so I'm not expecting it to do that. Might have to blow up the air compressor. There we go. I suspect that wasn't quite on tight enough either. And a brand new, unused lock washer. How handy is that? You have to remember how these bits go back together without losing them. Now, is that got a slight concave on it, and I didn't look which way it came out. But I'll have to check, because who's to say it was in there right anyway. I have seen people having to use slide hammer to get these going. but I'm hoping I don't need to resort to that. If I do, I do. It's not the end of the world. But I'll put a couple of these back in just to give me a little bit more leverage. And let's just have a pull and see what happens. Oh, no slide hammer required. There we go. A quick inspection in here, and to be honest, it really doesn't look that bad. Can't see any damage, and what you're frequently looking for is where grooves have worn on the underside of these, on both sides, because that's where the driven plates go through, and I cannot see anything that's a problem. It might even be a new one. Well, my 6 plate theory is blown out of the water, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Ah, dear. Right, let's strip them down. Let's have a quick look. Probably is the oil then. More fool me. So let's have a quick look at these plates then. Oops, better take them back off. And looking at this, there are marks, but it's not grooves at all. It is literally just surface marks. Well, nothing obviously wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm wrong about the number of friction plates. So what I'll do is I'll have a look at them, and they don't actually look that bad. I'll find out if there is a spec on how thick they're supposed to be and measure them. But I'm of half a mind to give these a good wash in some white spirits, soak them in different oil, and pour them back and see how we go on. At the moment, if the thickness is up to spec and they don't look too bad, well, we'll get them measured. I've been doing a little bit more research on these, and still I haven't got an answer. I can't really find the right information for an F2 clutch. This thoughts that I had between 3 and 6 friction plates, well, there is issues with friction plates, but I'm not sure I was right in the first place. However, the friction plates seem that every measurement you see for any kind says they should be between 3.42 and 3.58. And 3.5, 3.5, 3.5, 3.54. Looking through them, they do seem they're all at least into the spec that I understand. 3.54. Might even be that, like I thought, these might be new ones. 3.53. Now, all of the plates are the same. However, there is something interesting here. On the clutch basket, there's actually a little bit more of a cutout for a different outer plate. So it should have some sort of different outer plate. I think this was something Honda brought in. So I know that this set is missing this different plate here. So I'm going to have to investigate that. At the moment, I feel a bit stumped. So I'm going to clean everything up. I don't think it's the oil. I don't think it's that I got the number of friction plates as being the issue, but I do think it might be that there is a friction plate missing. So I'm going to do some more research on that. One other thing that I found was the length of these is supposed to be something like 3.194 millimeters. And these are actually 35.2. Now I do believe that the F2 had longer springs, but I think they might have actually been 36. So it could be that these springs are actually worn out. So it could be that plate, these springs, I'll probably buy a new set, or the oil. And I don't think it's the oil, so I'm going to get new springs, try and get one of those plates that I'm talking about, see if I can get a replacement for that, and put it all back together, see what happens. While I'm waiting for these parts to turn up, what I'm going to do is clean off all of these discs. I've measured them and I'll measure them again, and I'm sure these were pretty much new discs that were in there. So I'm going to use brake cleaner to clean them off, give them a good scrub, let them all dry off. Oh, although it's an oil pan, I've cleaned it with brake cleaner already, and I've put something in the bottom as well, so I can give them all a good, real good steam too. I'll get on with the rest of them. Draining the tank's made a lot easier with one of these special funnels, especially if you get the aim right. Banged my bloody head, but not to worry. Right, I don't intend to change the oil filter. I'm just going to let the oil that's in it run out. I think what I might do is just leave it like that for a little while, come back, tighten it up, clean it all off, and I think I'll call that done. Banged my head again. Just pop the plug, the sump plug, or not the sump plug, the tank plug back in and give it a tweak. That'll do. I'm really not sure if this will come out on camera, and I can't say there's lots, but there's enough for me to worry about. Sparkles in the oil, and there definitely is more than I would have liked. Now I can also say this oil pan wasn't clean when I first put this oil in, so I'm really not sure it is just from the CB750, but it's worrying. Now this oil wasn't from the oil pan, and I put it onto something dark to try and get a better picture of what's going on, and actually I can't see anything worth talking about in there. Now, this is oil that came out of the oil tank. And yeah, well, I'm going to go with the bike as it is at the moment, but it will prey on my mind, that. So the new parts I've bought have now turned up. I've got one of the Type B clutch plates, and as you can see, the actual bit that goes into the clutch basket is actually about 2mm wider, so that's right. Measuring it, it's about 0.1 of a mil thicker. I don't think the thickness is of any interest, but you know, that's how it's turned up, and it's a supposedly new old stock, which I think it means it's just got a little bit of rust here and there, but actually it seems okay. I also bought some EBC springs, Now these are the springs that are definitely safe for the CB750 SOHC F2, 100%. And I noticed that the springs are a little bit shorter than the ones that are fitted. However, you can see it's a thicker gauge wire, and having squidged these and squidged these in the pack, I can feel these are quite a bit firmer. Now I measured how long the spring is when it's clamped on. You've got to remember that there's another plate at this side of this. Sorry, another plate at that side of it. And certainly, I mean, it's longer than the normal standard. They're about 33mm. I didn't open the pack in case I was going to send them back. I don't think I am. I'm going to use these. Now, the only other problem is I didn't manage to find another one of these, and I don't want to spend it looks like about £100 to buy a new one. I think it'll work as it is. I know it's not right. Please forgive me, but we'll give it a go. Be proud of me. I've bought some 1040, which is the preferred weight for these engines. It's a mineral motorcycle oil. It says for use in wet and dry clutches. Now, I've used the low-end classic car oil in multiple bikes before and not had a problem with the oil. But I thought, let's cut all of the chances out. And so I bought this. Obviously, a link to this and to the other two items I bought, I'll shove in the description. Having got oil that most people will approve of, what I'm going to do is just give each of the clutch plates a good dousing with it. I'll leave each one in. Well, I'll put more than one in at once, I think. So they've got the right oil on them for when they first start off. People say leave them in for 24 hours, but these plates are not the old cork plates you used to have on old bikes. I don't think they suck up that much oil. I think it's if they've got a coating on, I think that's good enough. So I'll do them all, but that was the new one, so I'll leave that for a little bit longer. And while I've let them have a good dousing, I'll leave as much of the oil on as I can. Put them in order. Just each of the steel ones, just to rub round with it. Like I say, I'll leave each set for about 10 minutes. It might not be obvious, but these two parts can go together one way. You can get it 180 degrees out, and the way that you can tell is that it won't go in no matter what. I didn't take the clutch basket out, so if you did, it's held in with a spring washer, and it also goes on to splines like that does, but bigger ones at the back. Now, I'm doing this the way that it shows you in the Honda manual, which is you put this in first, then you put all your plates in. Now, I've marked this, and I've marked the clutch centre so that I can get the 180 degrees right, because it will be a bit of a fiddle afterwards. And you start with a friction plate, and I'm going to put the slopes going that way. So, friction plate first, and a steel plate, and it might pay you to try and line these up now. Another friction plate, again going that way. And you just put them in one at a time. And the final plate, which is the one that's got the wider tabs on it, and I've not found a really definitive answer as to why. At the moment, looks on here, there we go. Now, the reason I've put them sloping that way, and I'll probably get told I'm wrong, is this clutch is going to go that way around, and any oil that's in here, I'm hoping it's going to push towards the centre. Centrifugal force is going to be pushing it the other way, but that was my rationale on it. Might not be right. Line up all of these, because the next bit's going to be a bit fiddly. The next part is you've got to put this in. So I've marked it so I know this will match together. You can probably hear the warmer rain of the British summer. So it'll go in the right way, not 180 degrees out. And what I've got to do is fiddle it in onto those splines and to all of these ones on the plates, the steel plates. So let's see how I do. Not well at the moment. Well, I won't make you struggle with me with that. I'll work it in and come back. The one thing they never say about for mechanics is that you actually do need a lot of patience. The inner drum is a fiddle to get in, and I had a couple of runs up at it, but surprisingly it does get there. The thing that might catch you out is that this plate's sat a bit further back, so you think you've still got another one to go, and then when you pull the plate forward you can see it actually clamps them all up. So they're all in nicely now. The other way of doing this is to actually build the drum and the plates up and slot them in going that way. That's, I think, the previous ways that I've done it. I think it's much of a muchness. It's a fiddle. You have to get there. Right, onto the clutch centre now. Now the washer that goes on here is actually a spring washer, which means it's like slightly concave. I said I wasn't sure whether it was in the right way around when I took it apart, so I wouldn't have known. But there is only one way that this will work. Obviously, if you put the sprung in bit against here, it's against all these bits of spline and such like, which can't be right. So you actually want the concave going outer. And then I think it's probably is the convention anyway. Then it holds against the centre of this actual nut. Now this nut torques up to 42 to 48 Newton meters. I do it to 42, and if you've watched my previous video on a clutch like this, the reason I do that is if you have to move it, as I was saying, if you have to move it to actually match up to the tangs on the lock washer, which I was forgetting to put in, you can always tweak it up a little bit more. Lock washer's pretty obvious, it'll only go in the one way so that it catches on that. So now all I need to do is find some way of securing it from turning and torque it up to 42. So let's go and get the torque wrench out. Another chance to play with my new higher quality torque wrenches. Don't laugh, they're high quality to me. Now I'm using the tool that I made in the video. I've done a clutch before, so if you want to make one of these, you can go and find that. Fits onto here. Now the problem is that spins around. Now you can get a special clutch holding tool. I actually think I've got one. I can never find it. That's really annoying. But what I did last time and what I'll do this time is I'll use this monstrous spanner to hold it in place while I torque it. Now as you'll see, I'm short of arms here, so I might go and get someone to squeeze on this while I do that. I'm sure you'll forgive me, but you'll understand I will have torqued it by the time you see it again. It's not the perfect tool, but perhaps better than what I was going to use. But it's for doing something on British bikes and I can't remember what. I've got a series coming up soon that you may see me use this for the proper job it's for. However, it will, wedged in there, do a much nicer job than that big wrench. Now I think I can put my thumb on there, push that in, there we go. I think I did a better job of it this time than last time. Great tool. I wonder what it is. And now that I've torqued it to 42, the tangs on these are set at odd angles so that you're likely to get one that matches up and not have to twiddle the nut a bit more. But if you look, this one down here looks absolutely spot on. So I can fold that up. I'll get a punch and just knock it down between those two and that'll be nice and secure. Famous words, going nowhere. The next thing for me to consider, I didn't manage to get a replacement for this. I am a bit concerned that that lip's missing, but I think that it's going to work okay. If this broke off altogether, then definitely not. So I'm going to put this back in for now, and I'll look for one on a auto jumble, and when I get one I'll perhaps swap it back in. The next thing is I've got these new springs. As you can see, they're not as long, although it's not quite as pronounced as I perhaps feared. Now these are the EBC set specifically for this engine, it says, so it's not like they're the wrong ones. Now for the standard CB750, these would be long anyway. The standard ones are 31.94 and these are 35.5. These ones are actually, just so that you can see, 32.31. Now if somebody really knows what they should be in an F2, and if these aren't right, do put something in the comments. But I do know one thing, they're a thicker gauge steel by quite a way, and if I do that, well, I can move that one quite easily. That one, I am moving it, but I think it's more in my head than in reality. Let's hope it doesn't make the clutch too heavy, but I think it might make it better. So I'm going to go with them. Clutch lifter on, let's get it done. Springs can go on either way. Decisions. I'm going to actually put that to that end the opposite to there. So let's see how that works out. So let's start off with everything's a lot more fiddly than you expect. Last time when I was doing one of these had been swapped from an original, and I very nearly snapped the bolt that I was putting in. It was really touch and go. It actually started to waste. What I mean by that is get thinner. Now I can't say I'm overjoyed at putting this one in here, but I think it'll be alright. So just do them up finger tight first of all. And remember, this is steel going into aluminium, so it's not going to be monstrous. And the trick is, and the reason this is broke, is probably because someone tried to tighten one down first of all without taking into account you need to keep the spring pressure even. So I try go across. You do that one till you see a little bit of a gap on there. Then you do these ones and do the opposite. And then when it gets so that your fingers won't do it, or maybe they will, just keep going, even pressure. It's actually difficult to find torque settings for these, but I found last time 12 Newton meters, so I'll go with that again. Oh, and I've put it in gear. There's enough clutch drag for it to be dragged. Again, I'm not going to go straight to it. That sounds like it's there, that one. Oh, and that one. And that one. So they're all done to 12 Newton meters. Should be good. I am planning to be back in here to replace that. Maybe I never will, but it's certainly my thoughts at the moment. But this was and looks like a very new gasket, so I'm just going to give it a quick wipe so there's no oil on it, although I could grease it round, and I'm just going to put the cover back on. Good enough. There's the cover. Everything in here looks okay. little bit of tappy. It's just so it seats down onto the dowels. There's a variety of different lengths, some with shoulders, some without. I think the shoulders go where the dowels are, right? But the trick is, you just keep putting them in until you've got them all sticking out pretty much the same distance. And then when you've done that, you've probably got them right. So I'll do that, and then I'll tighten them down. These tighten down, I'm doing it to 10 Newton meters. The steel or the stainless into aluminium. I'm never going to go more than 10 Newton meters. And if you remember, I checked that all the threads were okay, or seemed okay, when I was taking them out. I'll torque these up to 10 Newton meters. And I will go around just putting some pressure on them till I get there. Can't remember if I did that one. Probably not. You do get confused. That one's there already. So that's saying that, I'll try and go opposite. Not like when I was in the army, we used to torque everything up until your eyes bled. And of course, me being me, I'll now go around them all again just to make sure. Next thing is, put the actual clutch actuating lever back on. So first of all, let's get this back in here. If you remember, I did just hook it off rather than taking the cable off. And that goes back on there. Let's put the washer and the nut on. This is the lock nut. Not exactly the smoothest thread at the end there, but it's fine. And this little malarkey is to pull it back. So hooks through there and then over that. Just yeah. So need to adjust that up. And then the other thing is we tighten this down till it touches. I'd actually done it when I did the nut up. Till it touches, and then half a turn back, and then the lock nut on. This isn't an actual very critical measurement here. It can be a third of a turn, it could be 2/3 of a turn. You just got to make it so that your lever works okay, but that there is some clearance. Right. All still working. Let's see if it's doing anything for me. Now I haven't really got a proper way of testing this, but I've put it in 5th gear. And I can feel it turning the engine over. And if I pull the clutch in, it'll run for free. I think it's possible that the job is now a good one. But until I get it off here and take it out, I really can't say. If you listen carefully beyond the rain, You probably can hear the engine just puffing as the exhaust's opening. And if I pull the clutch in, I can spin it for fun. Before I put the kickstart back on, I'll put this plate back on so I can line it up better this time. If you remember, I did put a little mark on here so that if I line it up, that certainly isn't it. Let's see, line it up. There we go. I hadn't realised how badly I'd got that the first time around. That is absolutely spot on now. Until I get out and ride it, I won't really know how cured or not it is. Definitely when it's in gear and I'm turning the back wheel, it's turning the engine over. However, there's still a lot of oil on those plates that'll probably wear a bit thinner when the engine's actually running. So I don't need to worry about that too much at the moment. You may have heard during the back end of this video that the nice warm wet weather that we always have in Britain during the summer has arrived again and promises to be here for at least a week, so I won't be riding it anytime soon. Must remember to put oil back in. I think it's going to be okay. I think that having gone through the clutch, put in one of the proper plates on the outside, although I think that you can get away with just using the normal plates on the outside, putting the locking tab on the clutch centre nut. If you knew that wasn't locking tabbed up, you might worry about it. I don't need to worry about it now. I've even made the kickstart match into the panel a lot nicer, so that as well. So, watch next time, and hopefully I'm taking this on longer rides than I have previously. Either way, please subscribe, do follow along.